Josh is here from the SC Whisperer. We welcome him in here today to go through a fair bit of team structure and really how to set up a great team in Supercoach. So welcome, Josh. Thanks for being here.
No, mate, thank you so much for having me. Been a long-time fan and, very, very good to get on the channel finally.
Yeah, crossing codes. I think it's going to be good to try and merge everyone in together a little bit and everyone be nice to Josh. He's in the Discord now as well and in a few of the Facebook pages. So welcome him in. He's playing both and that's okay. It should be okay anyway. So firstly, mate, just going to kick it off with some team structure. Firstly, just some similarities that you see each and every year in terms of, positioning, go for your life as to what works for you there.
Yeah, so I guess with start away with hooker, from your fantasy stuff, the 80-minute hooker that can punch out consistent scores are a rarity. So paying up for one of them has been sort of my strategy year on year. With Supercoach, it's all about attack. So halfbacks, fullbacks, and 5/8s, they're where your points are scored. Front row forward in recent years has been somewhere you can potentially skim on, and this year presents a lot of mid-range value there as well. 2RFs, a lot of guys are going to be on the edges. So a lot of guys are going to be, your edge back rowers compared to your 13s and your centers, your try-scoring wingers. You'll find a lot of the highest Supercoach scorers are on the left-hand side of an attack.
Why do you think that is?
I think just teams are just more, fluent on their left-hand side. So in recent years, I think if we go through the top centre wings from last year, Ruben Garrick on the left-hand side, Valentine Holmes, Alex Johnston, Talon May, like all these guys in the top, 10, 5 of positions are generally left-hand side. Ronaldo Mulatalo, Siva Talakai, both left-hand edge guys. Probably the two big standouts would be Zach Lomax and Campbell Graham, but both those guys are, big base center wing. So a lot of your high upside guys are on the left-hand side of attack. And I think that just simply comes down to teams being more fluent on their left-hand side of attack.
The thing I thought of there was that, do you think most guys are just better right to left passes, or is that a thing?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think that's, I'm sure at the top level, your skills are fine both ways, but I guess coming through the juniors, you're more proficient right to left, so it probably translates more into first grade footy.
Cool. So that's definitely something to think about. So obviously, if you're these section, you've got the hookers, you have the halves, the 5/8s, and also the fullback that just has two players that you can select in there. How important are these positions?
Yeah, for me, fullback, it's something that I spend 2 guns minimum. I know in fantasy, a lot of guys are looking at, your mid-range guys like your Xavier Savage or, your Hayes Perham or whoever gets the fullback spot there at the Bulldogs. But in Supercoach, for me, it's the highest averaging position. Like you can see here, Harry Grant was the top hooker at sort of 77. Even the top halfback here, Nico Hines is 85. But you look at fullback, 90 points here from Pappenhausen, 84 from Latrell, nearly 80 points here from Tedesco. So it's the position, with one of the highest consistent averages year on year. And it's, a lot of where your captaincy is going to come from. Supercoach is very friendly to, when it comes to try assists, that sweeping fullback out the back. It seems they get a lot more of the try assists that dump off to the winger. You especially look at someone like a South Sydney when you have Cody Walker hit the line, Latrell at the back off to AJ. It's generally Latrell that's going to get awarded that try assist. So, yeah, it's much more weighted to a fullback in that attacking sense. Yeah,
that makes sense. So you got the highest averaging guys. Plus, if you're having a cheapie in that second spot, right? Even if you aren't playing him week to week, if your fullback goes down with an injury this year, especially if they have the bye, there's the suspensions, you'd have to make a trade, right? Because you need to get that good scorer.
Yeah, you kind of want that top echelon scorer there. If you can bank on at least a 75 from your fullback week in, week out, fantastic. I mean, if we scroll down to even some of these mid-range guys like a Kalen Ponga or a Dane Laurie, even someone off the top of my head here, like a Jake Cavarillo last year, for example, only averaged 34 points compared that to Pappenhausen, Latrell, Teddy, who are all, pushing 80 plus, and you are paying up for that. But, with that big points discrepancy, with the additional benefit of them being a potential captain, double points, it's just going to make it far more sustainable. And if you can save as many trades, yourself with team planning, if you can pick a team for round 1 and you can look at some guys and lock them in for season long, you're saving yourself headaches there, barring injury for trades.
Yeah, awesome. So if there was a must-have cheapie and they're in the fullback position, how do you play that one?
We've had this discussion.
Must have in quotation marks.
Yeah, me and a few of the other guys have had this. If someone came in at very close to bottom dollar and they were locked into fullback side that was in a good side, so let's say whoever plays fullback for the Dolphins, if it is to be Hammer, it's different because he's available at centre wing and Supercoach. But if he was strictly available at fullback only, and he was, in a poor side, probably not going to put up as many points, I'd probably have to give them a miss, honestly. But I guess it just comes down to, for me, if the cheapie, if you project them to average 60, then I'd probably take a punt on them. But nothing's presented themselves like that in recent years, and thankfully we've never had to have that issue.
Okay, and that's going to be the exact same across halfback, 5'8", and in hooker as well, most likely.
Yeah, I mean, halfback is very similar. We can see the top sort of averages here from fullback. If we go to halfback, Hines, Cleary, and Mitchell Moses, but even he had a pretty substantial drop off. So it is very top heavy from these two. The only really cheapie that is probably in my consideration would be someone like Lockie Ilias here, who averaged 34.6 last year, available at 360k. But, apart from the top two guys, there's a couple of guys, in the mids that I'm looking at, someone like a Sam Walker, Cherry Evans, if you can back a fully fit turbo, but there's not a whole lot that's sticking out to me this year at halfback as well. There's only probably 5 or 6 names I'm really considering. So for me, I'm trying to find the cash to lock in Hines and Cleary. The same as fullback, if you can not worry about these guys moving forward. I know that they do have an overlapping bye in round 13, but you would think the points that you make up from rounds 1 to 12 would far outweigh the one down week that you're going to have when they do have a combined bye.
Yeah, and that makes plenty of sense. So are you someone of the fact that you're looking to get these top guys in, as many of these top scorers as you can, and you're trying to make up for the points in other areas with some cheapies and mid-ranges elsewhere, like spending that lower cash, and you're just really trying to find that, the gold mine there in those cheaper guys?
Yeah, so this year a couple of positions have presented themselves, with good mid-ranges. Somewhere in like 5'8", for example. You're going to have a lot of guys in this mid-range bracket. Luke Thompson, Corey Horsburgh, Tom Gilbert, Daniel Saifidi, even Tom Flegler. Like, these mid-range guys are presenting far more value to me, being underpriced, than someone like a Tino or a Joe Tarpany. That had sky-high averages last year. You can even see here quickly, like the top front row forward was Tino last year with 67. Going to halfback, 67 would get you, just the 5th spot here at fullback, halfback, or even the 7th spot at fullback. So you can quickly see where it's more beneficial to spend the money. And for me, front row forward is a position that a lot of mid-rangers are presenting themselves to be more valuable. Same as halfback. Like, halfback is presenting himself to be the top 2 guys. Fullback, we've already mentioned these ones we really want to set themselves up for. And I guess with 2RF, you can see a lot of the top guys here. IPAP edge. Murray's an outlier at 13, but Sean Lane's an edge. Hudson Young's an edge. Colin Matungi's an edge. Crichton's an edge. Isaiah Yeo is a 13, but a lot of these guys are all edge back rowers. So that's, I guess, something to consider for your 2RF as well. Your high ceiling guys, obviously, you try scoring 80-minute players are generally on the edge. You find very, very few big minute 13s. So if you're just looking for sheer points per minute as well, your edge players are probably more beneficial for that 2RF spot as well.
Yeah, a lot of them scored a lot of tries last year, didn't they? You look at guys like Hudson Young, obviously Sean Lane coming into his own. Crichton a bit lower than last year, and Nat Butcher had a big year. So yeah, plenty of good edges. Even you guys like Colin Matungi's, Olakau'atu's, not as amazing in fantasy. Still average about a 50, but here they're a bit of a gold mine at certain times of the year, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, when a try's worth 17 points, and most of those tries are, additioned with a line break, that they're worth 10 points. So there's 27 points. If they carry over a defender or two, that's considered a tackle bust. So you're looking at somewhere between sort of 29 to 31 points for a try, at least in Supercoach, which, is, in the fantasy community, it's always been the big. If we're going to stick the knife in, it's the scoring. It can be quite high volatile, and I guess we'll discuss that when we get to centre wings. But if you know that, you can adjust your team structure for that. I know a lot of casual guys would look at the likes of Isaiah Yeo as sort of a stalwart, but it just doesn't present the upside. You think even someone like Bo Firma, who averaged 65.4, is not a household name compared to someone like Isaiah Yeo, who averaged 66, and it just shows you that these edge guys, even for feeder in a bad year, average the same as Isaiah Yeo. So it just goes to show you that these high upside edge guys are far more valuable, and you find that even in the lower section. there's a lot of, cheaper guys. I know Luke Garner is quite popular in both formats right now. Cheap edge guy that I think would have the same upside as someone like an Isaiah Yeo for nearly half the price.
Yeah, that's crazy. So if we're looking position to position at the moment, is front row forward a position you're not looking to pick up a gun at all, like a top gun?
I guess it might be a little bit easier if, we refresh this page here and you can see where my side is kind of situated right now. But front row forward for me is somewhere that, I am definitely looking to try and save as much money as possible. If we look at the 2023 team picker and how I've structured it, you can see I've gone pretty cheap with Lindsay Collins and Daniel Saifidi. As we said, the top guys in Payne Haas is averaging, not Payne Haas, Tino is averaging 67, Haas in a down year 63. If there was no question marks over Payne Haas and, the off-field stuff didn't happen, he doesn't have these niggling injuries, and he is someone I'm happy to spend up for, but just because he's been such a consistent outlier year on year. But yeah, I think Daniel Saifidi off a down year, Lindsay Collins off a second year, off his, major injury, Luke Thompson, as we've said, there's other guys. I think personally Joe Tarpany is the best front row forward option. But, when Daniel Saifidi is 220k cheaper than him, is that going to present that much more value? I don't think so. When a lot of us are predicting Saifidi to average closer to his 2021 metrics, which was about 60 points a game. And as we can see, Tarpany averaged 66 last year. So 6 points difference for 220k. I'm happy to lose that.
Yeah, that sounds fair. And when you're setting this bench up, I find that very interesting how you're looking at this. You got David Moale and you got Pele. Is that a normal strategy to go 2 scoring guys and then 2 guys that if you have to play, you will, and you'll cop that? Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. Front row forward is not somewhere front row forward isn't somewhere that we're happy to have, a 400k guy just sitting there to make money for no reason. So I guess for people that aren't familiar with Supercoach, you pick your starting 13, you pick your 4 reserves. I know in fantasy you can pick sort of whatever positions you want for your 4 reserves. Whereas in Supercoach, you've got to pick 1, or you can have 3. If you want to, you can have 3 two RFs, but you don't get to have 4 hookers if you want. So it's 1 from sort of each line of positioning. Okay. And front row forward's not somewhere that I'm, really looking to stick a reserve tag on. I think there's better value elsewhere, and especially as we've touched on, when we've got halfback here and fullback, 2 of those guys are going to be taking up my reserves each week, and I've only got to find 2 other spots. And Moale and Pele, they're cheap and they'll turn over some funds here and there, but I'll play them at a pinch if I have to during some buys. But I'm not looking to those guys for big points.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, and so in terms of team structure, I'm feeling a simple strategy seems like you're going to get 2 to 4 of some of the best scorers in the game. 1 you can captain, 1 you can vice, and if there's a few question marks on some top guns in a certain position, you're looking to fade them and go for a little bit more mid-range. Would that be sort of the general strategy?
Yeah, as you can see from 2RF here, look, Bateman, I'm a Tigers fan, so probably a little bit of bias there, but he is priced at an average of 59. In his first year at Canberra, average 77. Now, I know that, it's probably not the same John Bateman, but I'm just looking at him being priced at 59. Do I think he's going to be better than that? Yes. So I look at him as potentially a season-long keeper. David Fafita, we've looked at him with Kieran Foran potentially as a big upside play. I don't think we're going to see anything worse from Fafita. At worst, he might just plod ground. Adam Elliott in a new role. These guys have upside. The 2 RFs that are premiums, IPAP, can we trust him at the Tigers? Cam Murray's always been a staple, but I think this is sort of his ceiling. We're not getting much value on him. Do you worry about a second-year syndrome for Sean Lane? Same with Hudson Young. So, apart from Cam Murray in this sort of top 5, I'm not sold on a lot of them. We're gonna look elsewhere. That's sort of the gist of it. As you can see from the bench, there's a lot of love over Hopgood, Ray Stone, and whoever gets the edge spot at Parramatta. So right now they're placeholders, but I think you hit the nail on the head by picking 4 or 5 of the top options. For me, that would be Hines, Cleary, Tedesco, and Latrell. And then looking at some upside guys like Matt Burton, Adam Elliott, Daniel Saifidi.
Yeah, Fafita, Robson, these types of guys, which are pretty close to that, or they're in that top 10 anyway. In terms
Smith.
Of trade strategy, just to go along the year, we're going to start with this amount of guns. You said we probably, we'll work that out in a sec, but how many guns would usually be in your team to kick off a year? And then how many would usually stay for the whole year if they do happen to just play all year, probably miss a game or 2 over Origin, which is normal, backing up?
Guns, I think it comes down to what kind of value presents itself. As we touched on, if Payne Haas wasn't, have any question marks over him, he finds his way into my side and would be a season-long keeper. But since, there's question marks over him, we've looked elsewhere. So he is a guy that I'm looking to target down the line. But I guess in this sort of initial team of guys I want to hold the season with, I'd love to hold one of Robson or Smith, depending on who shows themselves to be the better option. And then obviously Harry Grant is the end goal. I would probably look to be holding for Fifita Bateman. So there's, I'd say 2, 3, 4 in Hines and Cleary. I think Burton could be a season-long hold. None of my centre wings will be a season-long holds. And then your 2 fullbacks. So you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 10, depending on your team structure, and depending on what cheapies become available. And, at the end of the year, when we've got 25 guys there, if I can have, 8 of them done now in my, best 17 moving forward, then I think that's, very beneficial. But, this team will change and it will depend on what, cheapies do become available. But I'm,
sure. Is there,
pretty happy with it right now.
For sure. Is there many times where you will trade out a gun keeper in buy periods and stuff like that?
Look, we might trade out if somehow Fifita played his way into an Origin spot. We'd look at trading him out, same as a Reece Robson if he found himself on the bench for Origin. Hines or Cleary could find themselves out of my team, during that Origin period because depending if Hines gets the 18th man, that's going to rule him out for another week. Cleary will obviously be the halfback. Depending on if we think they're going to back up, if Penrith. Some of us are predicting that the Penrith will struggle this year in that sort of top 4 battle. They might not be the dominating team they were years gone by. So if Cleary wants to come back and play, then he could be a hold. But if Penrith are cruising and we know that he's going to get a couple of weeks off, he could be a guy that we look to trade out.
Yeah.
Because as you've touched on, you don't want to have a cheapie down here in fullback and be forced to play them. Same as halfback for me. I don't really want to be forced to be playing someone that's not ideal. So in that Origin period, I'd be looking at trading out maybe Hines or Cleary for someone who I feel could hold ground and not lose any cash, and then trade them back in for the season's end.
Cool. Are you looking to trade hard early, or are you sort of saving a lot of your big trade weeks for through in the middle?
So last year for Supercoach was the first year that he introduced a trade boost. I know that in fantasy, you have your 2 trades from a certain week, then 3, then 4.
Yeah.
For Supercoach, it's a flat 2 all year, apart from Origin time. Then I think you get 5 from memory. But last year was the first year of the boosts, and there was a lot of chat in the Supercoach community about how those boosts would be used. Now, for full disclosure, I came 140th last year in Supercoach, and my strategy. Oh, thank you. My strategy was to fix up my mistakes early. Now, I used 3 boosts in, I would want to say, 10 weeks. I can probably get that information for you exactly just off the Supercoach app here.
That makes sense.
But yeah, like you could, if we look at history and we can see sort of trades that were made. So trades made. So 3, that was a boost, that was a boost, that was a boost, that was a boost. So I used 4 boosts in the first. Sorry, I used all of them very, very early. So I used all 5 within the first 9 weeks. And that just set the team up. You can see from my team value here that team value was forever increasing. And I went hard early because then if you set yourself up, look, I did run out at the end here as we can see. We've got 5 more weeks with no trades.
Still went down though. Still improved the rank.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, if you go early and set your team up, you're pretty fortunate. I think I had a fair bit of depth here as well. Like, I know it's probably a little bit off topic, but this was the team that we finished with last year. Centre wings, I had To'o and Garrick that were out. I had Talon May that was out, but I still had enough depth here in guys I was happy to play with. Adam Elliott, Mitch Barnett, even Max King was, a playable option last year. So I did have plenty of depth, even though these guys went down in the team that finished. So although I did run out of trades pretty early, we had the depth there to cover it. So I'm a believer of fixing up your mistakes. Don't boost for no reason, and don't just make trades for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But if I started with this team tomorrow, and Moali wasn't pulling his weight and someone else was there, then I'd obviously cut my losses. So go early, but be sensible with them.
Yeah, you can see you didn't even start that well, and it took 7, 8, 9 weeks for you to get into a good position. So that was a 75,000 round 1, and then into like 12,000 or something.
Yeah, over position. I
didn't
didn't consistently hit the top 1K until rounds 8.
7, yeah.
Just building. And then, like you said, these are the ranks here. And once we were there, held very firm in that top 200.
Awesome. All right, we've got a couple of questions to go, and then we'll let you go, Josh. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad that we're, last year was my first year of fantasy, and I loved it. And it's a different game, isn't it, mate? Look, the scoring's different. You watch the game differently. So to have that divide, pulled down, I think it'd be better for both communities.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of a position, do you have one of these 7 positions, that you're really excited about to start off the year?
Throw forward. I've never thought I'd say that before, but I love the idea of how many mid-range guys are available between 400 to 500k. Because when there's more options, it becomes more like halfback. I feel is going to be quite boring because a lot of us have Hines and Cleary. But when there's more room for differences, it's more exciting. It's more volatile. Same with 2RF. A lot of people are fading for Feeder because of his inconsistencies, whereas I'm a big believer, so I'm very happy to ride that up and down the wagon. And probably fullback as well, just because we're going to have Tom Trbojevic at a cutthroat price now. Just to give you an idea as to how good Trbojevic was 2 years ago, Hines last year averaged 86. Now Trbojevic averaged 143 in his 2020 the PVL ball year. And just ridiculous. I think the highest average beforehand was Teddy. I think he averaged 91, and that was a couple of years beforehand. And Turbo averaged 54 a game. So yeah, it was ridiculous.
Well, he averaged close to 100 in fantasy as well, which is absolutely ridiculous. So it was just a must-have captaincy every week, which I'm sure it was for you guys too. Well, did he get like 200 and something one week or? So I think he has 2 of the top 3 records in terms of points per game, and Cleary has the other one in that same year. I think it was Magic Round against the Titans. He might have scored 3 tries of his own and set up 4 or 5. Incredible. And last question, mate. In terms of captaincy, how do you look at this? Are you looking at just the highest average player? Are you looking at matchups?
I'm a matchups guy. I'm a big matchups guy. It wasn't even so. 2019, I think. 2019, 2020 was the death of the forward captain. If you were getting 65 points out of Payne Haas every week, you were doing well. Sam Burgess in 2018, like these guys, when you were getting 65 points for your captain, it was fantastic. But as you can see from averages, just the way the game's gone. When you're looking at Hines with an 86 average and Pappenhausen with a 90 average last year, it's definitely generated more towards the fullbacks. And I guess that's the benefit of having 2 guns in those 2 big positions. I can switch between Hines and Cleary, whoever has the better matchup. I can switch between Tedesco or Latrell, whoever has the better matchup. So although you'll never see me captaining Hamiso, Tabuai, Fido, even though you might have the best matchup, I've got options in my premium positions as to who I want to captain. So for me, I'm a matchups guy, but it's still going to be a gun-based selection.
Yeah, your top 4 guys, just switch between them. That makes a lot of sense. And that's why it is great to have 2, 3, 4 of the top guys so you can change things up there. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Josh? I think that was really good.
No, I mean, I think it's very exciting that both platforms are getting more love, and if the player base, for any fantasy guys out there that are watching, I definitely recommend giving Supercoach a try, because it does. It's frustrating because of how volatile it can be, but yeah, like even just before we wrap up, centre wings, I'm sure a lot of these guys like Alex Johnson would not be an option in fantasy at all, but he was a guy. A centre wing staple for many teams in years gone by for Supercoach.
Yeah, he'd kind of have his stretches where he'd do really well, but it's like, a 20's coming, a 10's coming. So, but he just keeps scoring tries. He's incredible.
No, definitely, mate. Look, I very much enjoyed being on, and thanks so much for having me.
Amazing, Josh. Thanks for that.
No, thanks, mate. Cheers.